and welcome to Top to Bottom Male Romance Podcast, where we celebrate all things male romance. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Markie.
And we have a lot to talk about. This is our first Bottom episode where we're going to cover our book of the month. But first, Markie had a chance to go to GRL, Gay Romance Literature Retreat, and she has a lot to tell us.
Yes, it was really fun. It was me and a friend of mine who ended up driving from Dallas, or the DFW area, up to Denver, Colorado. So it was about a 12-hour drive. We got there Thursday night, which was when the welcoming dinner was happening, as well as the after party that happened afterwards. By the time I got to the hotel, not only was I half of a person because I was barely awake and exhausted and just riding this high of being excited for the retreat, I staggered in without my badge because I had missed registration, and it was really weird. I walked in and there's, everybody's already sitting down and mingling, and I know 0 people there, and I must have looked like a lost puppy because one of the organizers, Tracy, walked up and was like, "Can I help you?" Real sweet. And I was like, "I'm here for the thing. I don't know. I don't have a badge. Help me." And she was like, "Oh yeah, no problem." So she takes me out of the big ballroom area, gets my badge, and she was like, "Is it your first time here?" And I said, "Yeah, I've never been to GRL before. I don't know anybody here. I'm kind of in a whirlwind of crazy emotions right now." She was like, "Yeah, no problem." So she walks me into the ballroom where everybody's sitting down, walks me over to a table and said, "Hey everybody, this is Markie. She's never been here before. Can she sit with you?" And everyone at the table's like, "Yeah, totally." So I sit with this wonderful group of ladies who I end up hanging out with for 2 hours while we're eating dinner. And they were like, "Oh, make sure you eat. Did you eat something? The food's over here. There's a bar over there. There's drink tickets in your badge. So you don't have to spend any money. So just go." They were really helpful. And that really set the bar for the entire retreat, because everybody for the rest of my time there was that warm and receptive and willing to just include me, even though I had never met these people in my life. And it was like that the entire retreat, which is really cool. When I get in and I get my food, of course, I was staggering around like a crazy person, trying to find the bar and the food. And this lady walks up to me and she was like, "Markie?" And I was like, "Yes," because I didn't know why would you know who I am? And it was J.P. Kenwood, who I'd been talking to online forever, who's the author of the Dominus series. And I adore her. And so she holds up her badge and it says J.P. Kenwood. And I, of course, commenced to squeal like an idiot and hug her. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I get to meet you finally." And she was like, "Well, I saw you wandering around. I just wanted to make sure you found the food." It was being super sweet. And she was like, "Oh, I'll connect with you later." And so she goes off to do her thing. But it was just so cool because I had been talking to her for months. I found her books and loved them and followed her blog and found her on Facebook. And we've been chit-chatting. She's been really supportive of the podcast, so she's been a really big help. So getting to meet her in real life was amazing. And she wasn't even going as an author. She was just there as a reader. So she lives in Colorado, so she was like, "I'll go." So it was just luck that we happened to have been there at the same time. After the dinner was the after party, which was with the Cocky Boys, which was really fun. They had RJ Sebastian, which is the head of Cocky Boys, and his partner Jake Jackson, which is the lead photographer. They talked about how they got into the industry, why they started Cocky Boys, overcoming the stigma of being people who work in pornography, and basically where they're saying of "there is no sin here" came from, which is one of their big taglines, is basically love who you love, be happy with yourself, and just, fuck the world kind of thing. So it was really interesting because you don't get to see that perspective from pornography, but people who work in the industry. And one of the things that they wanted to talk about is most people think that people get into pornography because they were forced into, or it was a bad situation. And they're like, "No, we're all working professionals. We're doing it because we love it," and the professionalism that goes into it.
So you actually got a picture with them. I want you to tell me that story because that picture is amazing. We're going to post that if you guys haven't seen it yet. It's already been on the Facebook page, but it's the best picture.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So 3 of the actors who work with Jake and RJ were there. It was Alex Meekum, Carter Dane, and Taylor Rain. They're all Cocky Boys, and they were there they were also part of the Q&A, so they talked a little bit about it. Alex and Carter are actually dating in real life, so they were talking about how that works as far as working together professionally in that industry, but then also dating in real life. And of course, they're just painfully adorable, so they talked about how they met, and it was just stupid. So after the Q&A part of it, we had a chance to meet Alex, Carter, and Taylor and have their picture taken with you. So there's this huge line, and everyone who went before me had all these really cute pictures because it was like, oh, pose like you're fawning over me. Or some people were like, show me your abs. You know, it was just, they were being really silly and really receptive to us because they had talked about how happy they were that they had so many female fans. Because somebody asked them, like, hey, what's it like having so many female fans as like gay pornography people? And they're like, I love female fans because you guys want to know who we are. You don't just walk up to us to be overly sexual. Like, you want to know like what we do in our pastime and who we are as people, which is really true because every time you walked up to them, even though they had met 100 people before you, they were still genuinely happy that you were there supporting them and happy to meet them. So it was really cool. So when it was my turn in line, reflecting back on the fact that I had 2 drinks, was still exhausted and just, you know, in a bubble of happiness, I walk up to him and Carter's like, what do you want us to do? Like, how do you want us to pose? I was like, do whatever you want. I just want a picture. Like, I'm just happy to be here. And so Alex looks at me and then glances at Carter and Taylor, was like, we can pick her up, and just scoops me up like I'm nothing. And of course, I squeak like an idiot because I wasn't expecting it. And so they're standing there, and Taylor and Carter on either side of me, and they're like, we're going to act like we're helping. And because Alex did not need help. This man is huge, and I was like a feather to him. So we were waiting for Jake to turn around and take the picture, but he was distracted by shiny things. And so poor Alex had to stand there holding me while he was waiting for him to figure out that there was a person in his arms to get pictures. So it was hilarious. And he was like, I really hope, is he going to turn around soon? And I go, I hope so. So it was really funny. And that was, as soon as I got that picture taken, of course, I like stagger away and fall into a chair and text Jess like, and just send her the picture. So it was so much fun. I wasn't expecting it to peak that fast.
Yeah, that smile on your face is like the biggest smile I've ever seen on your face in life. It was so great.
Yeah, well, because I was already excited to get a picture with them. Like, that was already cool. And then they just made it 11 billion times better by being sweet and friendly and picking me up. So it was super rad. And I'm really happy I got to meet all of them. And I'm going to post how to follow everybody on their Twitter handles so everybody can follow them. There was another cocky boy who showed up for an autograph signing later, Liam Riley. He showed up. He wasn't at the Q&A. He showed up later when they were selling their merchandise. So he was there too. And he was so sweet and cute. And he signed all my stuff because I was like, he's on one of the calendars that I bought and he's on the cover. So he's like, I'll sign the cover. And he signed it for me. He was awesome. Yeah, I'm glad I was able to meet him too, but he kind of weaseled in last minute. So after the Thursday night awesomeness, the next day, Friday, was full of panels and author Q&As. So the way they had it set up was there's certain rooms set off, like ballrooms or meeting rooms, that panels were happening. But then the general open area where everybody walked around was the author lounge. So they rotated it out. So certain points of the day, different authors were set up. Like Sloane Kennedy and Lucy Lennox were out there for a little while. Then like in a group of other authors that you could walk through their tables and talk to them. Some of them had books for sale there, but most of them were doing their sales during the signing, which happened on Saturday. But that's when everybody was giving out all their swag. So stress balls and stickers and just fun stuff. Sloane Kennedy was giving out like reader survival kits that were like little pouches that had like tissue and chocolate in them for her books because they can make you cry.
Oh my gosh.
So it was very cute. Like half of the fun was walking around and meeting authors, of course, that I didn't know and seeing all the fun stuff they had come up with.
Is that where you got me my super sweet thirds cards?
I missed Charlie's booth. I got that during the author signing.
Nice.
She had a bunch of stuff set up, but most of the really cool swag was set up during the author lounge. So you could go through it. People had like stress balls. And it was super fun to see how creative these authors got with promoting their work. And a lot of them, if you picked up their business card, had a code on the back for a free book.
Nice.
So that was super cool. So I was going through and picking up anybody who had a free book. I'm like, okay. So I'd scoop them up. It was really fun. I got to meet, like I said, a lot of authors who I'd either heard about before and never had the pleasure of, or people who I haven't had a chance to know about them yet, so I was able to ask them about which books they would recommend starting their series with and things like that. And of course, it was really cool because all the authors that are there are so excited to meet their readers. We're why they're there, right? And they made that very apparent when you met them. They were really thankful and sweet and wanting to talk to you and really willing to get pictures, and like everyone was really sweet and warm and wonderful. It was pretty freaking rad.
So is it safe to say that loaded you up with ideas for book picks for us? Because
oh yeah, like, oh God, we'll never run out of things to read. Like there's just so much. Like I ended up buying books just as like I'm talking to the author, and I was like, okay, and I picked up their book. So there's a lot of things I picked up just purely on a whim. Stealing the Wind by Shira Anthony. It's a merman romance book. Yes. And like the cover is what got me, because she works for Dream Spinner. And it was so funny because I had no idea I was talking to the author of that book, because it was Dream Spinner, so they had a bunch of author stuff on the table. And so I saw the cover and I was like, what is this? This is sexy. And it's this really pretty blue cover. I'll post a picture, and it's got these two mermen like, you know, being handsy. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a merman book before. So I'm picking it up and looking at it. Have you seen a merman book before?
You've read a merman book before.
Which one?
Marine Biology.
Oh shit, I forgot about that.
Which we'll talk about more next month.
That's like one of my favorite ones too. I feel like such an asshole. Okay, well I take that back then. I have read one, but this one also looks very good. So I gravitated towards it, and I picked it up, and I was talking about, I was like, yeah, I think I've seen this before, and I haven't had a chance to read it, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get it. And Shira was like, well, I'll sign it for you if you want. And I was like, oh, is this yours? And she was like, yeah, that's me. And like showed her badge, and I was like, cool. So she ends up, you know, signing it for me, and she drew a little merman fin in there for
awesome.
me. She was super sweet. So maybe we can try to get her on the show sometime, because she was great. So that happened a lot. I would go to different booths and would recognize covers for things that people had recommended, and be like, oh, you're so-and-so, you wrote that. Tell me about your book, you know? So it was really fun. Along with getting to meet all of the fantastic authors that were out there that I adored, there were a lot of really cool panels and author Q&As. They had a whole bunch of them, and I wasn't able to get to everything, because at a certain point in the day, I had to just sit down and like, like deflate. Because I got there at like 9 a.m. and just was like nonstop talking to people, going to panels, and so at about 2:00, I just sat by myself in a lounge and just like stared off into space and like let my mind catch up. So I missed like a panel, and I was like, shit. Because there was one that was murder and romance, and it had C.S. Poe and 3 other people talking about, basically they write murder mystery romances, and they're really fun. So I was like, oh, I want to go to that so they can hear about like how you do. And I missed it, so I was sad. But I was able to go to a panel with R.J. Barton, J.K. Hogan, and Sloan Kennedy about mental illness and romance. It was called In the Shadows, Trauma and Mental Illness and Romance. I haven't read J.R.'s or J.K.'s stuff, but I've read tons of Sloan's stuff. And we talked about on our first episode how all of her books have traumatic pasts or mental illness or something like that. Like, she's really big on putting those in her books. So when we asked her why that was, we asked everybody that. They said it was really important to them to normalize it and show that it's a valid thing. Most of the people who are authors in that genre also have some type of mental illness, like they have some like depression or PTSD. They have those disabilities. So they like working those into the fiction, because when people pick them up, people with the same disorders can see the characters going through that, and so they can know that there's help out there and be able to immerse themselves in the story and things like that. I don't have any of those disabilities, so reading those, I come from a totally different perspective, and it was really interesting the depth that reflects into, because I was just enjoying the story for the character development and how they overcome those obstacles and get help, and how their partners are receptive of that, and it works together in the story. It was really interesting listening to that. I was really thankful I was able to catch that one. And they also brought up trigger warnings in books, how you see that a lot in male fiction, not so much in other ones.
I think they just make it more apparent in male, because there's so many books in this genre have some sort of, you know, violent pushing or resistance, and that adds to the story in so many of these situations, and putting the trigger warning on it is a good thing, so that way people aren't blindsided by it. But I think it's pretty necessary, because if you don't know what you're getting into...
And they brought that up because apparently certain people will read the trigger warnings and will put the book down, because they either will say like, oh, I'm not comfortable with it, which is why those exist, or they feel like it spoils something. So they're like, well, now I know what's going to happen, so I don't want to read it. And that's kind of what, with the, like, I don't think so, that's kind of what most people said. It was like, no, I appreciate that being on there, because if I'm blindsided with this on-page rape that I didn't know was coming, it might make me really uncomfortable. That was a big deal. And I was like, well, and somebody had brought up apparently in male-female romance, you don't see as many obvious trigger warnings, because they'll put it, like in Sloane's, she's got it like right when you open the book, like, hey, this, so you know, here you go, you know.
That's actually a really good point, because I've been part of another romance book club. Like, triggery kind of things don't really hit me really hard. Like, yeah, they're a little disturbing, but they never, like, mess me up or anything. But reading through comments of other people saying, hey, this was really rapey, I'm not okay with this, I didn't know what was going to happen, so thanks, guys, for picking this book.
Right.
And that was a male-female romance book club, and people would get really, really upset about it, and I had never even really considered the need for it, but that really kind of drove that home, and some people just cannot handle it and need to be told ahead of time.
Yeah, I found that really interesting, because I'm the same way. Like, I would get like, oh, wow, that was dark, but I'm fine. But if somebody has had a traumatic background, that might throw them for a super loop, and that needs to be addressed. So apparently it is more prevalent in male stuff, like you said, because there's a lot of those themes. But I feel like it should be more of a traditional thing in fiction or romance in general, because some of the shit can get pretty hard. Because I remember being in the same, if you're talking about the book club I'm thinking you're talking about, there was a book that we had picked up that we both put down immediately, because we were like, wow, fuck this book. Like, we got like 2 chapters in, if that, and we're like, I'm out. Because we didn't know what we were getting into until we kind of dove into it. But that happens. So that was a really good panel. Another one I went to, which I wish you were there for, because holy shit, this is totally our thing. It was Queer Sci-Fi Romance, Negotiating the Line Between Sci-Fi and Romance. And it was really interesting.
Neat.
It was really good. And of course, Queer Sci-Fi, if you guys don't follow them, they're romance authors and nerds. Like, they're like, they read Tolkien and space.
People.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So they talked about how it's hard to navigate the line between an epic fantasy and romance, because they don't fit. Like, the nature of epic sprawling space odysseys and fantasies and things like that don't fit with the normal formula of romance, because romance are typically, it's centered around 2 people coming together, and it's hard to do that when you want to implement like a bazillion characters, because it's a huge fantasy world that you're putting together. And basically talking to them about how you navigate those waters and finding the line is really tough, because the authors that they had on the panel were discussing that certain people will review it and say there's not enough romance, but you have a great world, and then vice versa. Like, you're really concentrating on the romance, but I thought this was an epic space adventure, and they're like, what do you want from me? You know, it was really informative. So yeah, I wish you were there for that.
Yeah, me too. Because anytime, like, that's actually usually where I get stunted when I do try to write, is because I have all of these grand themes of world building in my head, and then I decide I want to start shipping all the characters, and there's just not enough time in the day for me to make all of the romances for all of the characters that I want to make. So that, I am very sad I missed that.
It was really informative, but what it really boiled down to was you do you. Like, just like make your world, implement everything you want to implement, and know you're not going to satisfy everybody. Right. I mean, definitely respond to feedback, but with the nature of how fantasy and sci-fi works, it's really hard to make the really romance-focused book. And they were also talking about basically the ramp up of having more queer characters in sci-fi books, because there's just not a ton, and that's becoming more normalized, and it's pretty awesome. But it was really informative, really cool. So I want to write an epic space adventure with romance.
Let me help.
Yes, one of these days down the road, with all the other to-do stories in my life. So that one was really cool. And then the last panel I was able to do after I deflated and had my moment of zen was I went to build a dom using your favorite tropes for fun. Ha! It was so fun. So we get in, and of course it has... Oh, actually, before I get too far, the authors who were at the Queer Sci-Fi, I didn't even mention them. J. Scott Coatsworth, Rory Nee... Oh my god, I'm going to say her name wrong. Coriolan?
I'm not going to try.
Yeah, I'll post their names. And then Arshad, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. I'm so sorry. It's like, no, I'm not going to try it, because I would be offended if somebody mispronounced my name like I'm going to try to do.
We will link it in the show notes so everybody can find their work.
So we'll link the names and the show notes of everybody who was there, because I'm really bad at pronouncing names, so I apologize in advance. Luckily, the people who were in the Build a Dom using your favorite tropes are names maybe I won't butcher as bad. So that was Casey Wells, Chris Owen, and L.M. Somerton. Probably mispronounced that one too, but sorry in advance. Anyway, so you get in, and they start it with a quiz. So we sit down, and we have teams, and I sat in a row, like, I walked in and sat in, like, the first seat, because, again, I don't know anybody there. And they're like, oh, it's a quiz. We're going to quiz you guys on BDSM terminology and safe words and things like that. And I'm like, oh my god. Because I know, like, tiny bit of this stuff, but I've only read like maybe 2 BDSM books. So I totally not my water. I did this for like to educate myself, and it seems cool. So I sit in a row with these ladies who are on point, like they know the color coordination for like if you, one of the questions was, a dom walks into a bar and he finds a guy wearing, what was it, a handkerchief that was black. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
It's spanking.
Oh.
He's into spanking. So I had no idea that there was apparently a rainbow of color codes. So like if you go into a BDSM club and you're wearing green or something, that means something.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So important things, right? So I had no idea about this. It was really interesting.
I am fascinated by this.
It was really, I was like, I have so much to look up now with Safe Search on.
But wouldn't you miss out on all the good stuff?
Yeah,
you have the Safe Search on?
Yeah, never mind, I'll turn it off. But so it was like things like that. Safe words, like apparently the typical safe words in power play stuff is like red, yellow, green. Like stuff like that. I was like, I've never heard of this. This is so fascinating. And of course, since my row was awesome, we got 9 out of 10 questions right. So I ended up winning a copy of Silk by Casey Wells. Like we walked up to the table and they could pick whatever prize. And she had her books out. And I had been seeing Silk, like people recommending it. So I was like, can I take your book as a prize? And she was like, totally.
Nice.
So I snagged it. I haven't read it yet because I haven't been home very long, but I'm very excited because this is like the people who are known for this type of genre and I get to snag one of their books. When we talked about like likes and dislikes and DOMs, our favorite tropes, people were, of course, they were so funny and witty on like the answers to these things. Because when we had what are some good and bad attributes for DOMs, we were like taking it seriously. Like he needs to know his technique and he needs to be receptive to his sub's needs and things like that. And other people were like, has a ton of money for a big playroom. And somebody else was like, has a big dick. It was just like, well, shit, you guys are funnier than us. So it was really fun. So that was a fantastic panel and I'm really glad I was able to go to that. So last thing I'll talk about, the Saturday was the massive book signing event and I'll post a picture of that too. There's basically every author and supporting author that were there loaded into one big room with their table set up and you walked around picking stuff up and getting your book signed. So if you hadn't run into them at that point, that was your chance. So I got to meet TJ Klune and we talked about the fun of listening to spicy audio with your windows down by accident. I got to have Sloan and Lucy one-up each other signing my books. So that was fun. I haven't even read it yet, but they were like, someone like took the book away from her, was signing, and Lucy's like, are you trying to one-up me? She's like, yes. She's like, you're a jackass. So that was fun. Talked to Charlie Cochet about how adorable Calvin and Hobbes are, and snagged amazing character cards, which I got you, and I'll post a picture of them too. They're really cool. I got to meet E.A. Via and buy one of her books. She's beautiful and amazing. I also got to meet C.S. Poe. Sheer Anthony was there. I got to say hi to her again. Reyes Ford, which she's been really supportive of the podcast too, and she was really excited to see me, which was fun because nobody should be excited to see me. You're the great one. Why are you excited to see me? So it was really fun to meet her, and then of course I got to go talk to Mistress Casey Wells and get my book signed. But yeah, I definitely want to go back next year. It's going to be in Virginia. Hopefully we're able to get out there and meet everybody again, reconnect with everyone. If anybody was out there that I met, I would love to reconnect. So if you remembered me talking about my podcast like a crazy lady, you should let us know that I met you and talked your face off about this podcast. So, and I'll also put a list of all the books I bought too, because why the hell not? But it was fun. I loved it. GRL is the best thing ever.
I'm so madly jealous. Some of that bit, you haven't been back in town long, and so I haven't heard all of the stories. And so you guys can't see this, but for the last 90 seconds, I've had both of my hands on my cheeks and staring at Markie like a crazy person with excitement. So, man, that sounds really amazing.
It was really amazing. Oh, I forgot to mention, I got to meet Abigail Rowe too. And we discussed in the first episode that she was one of my first forays into MM romance. So she was there, and she typically isn't able to go because apparently GRL matches up with her daughter's birthday. Mm. So it just happened to not this year, so she was able to go. And she said TJ made her go. So,
nice.
So, but she was giving out shirts, and I got a picture with her, and she was really cool. So I'm really happy I was able to meet her as well.
Yeah, I do remember you texting me saying that she was very snarky and you can very much tell how Ty came out of her.
Yeah, like the way she talks and her mannerisms and just her responses to things. I was like, you are Ty. It was so funny. So it was very cool. I'm just still in shock and happiness.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on this, and actually I'm sure we could talk about it for a lot longer, but this is normally the amount of time we spend on our podcast. It's going to be longer this month, though. Because of GRL, it won't normally be this long. But now we're going to talk about our book of the month.
Yes.
Merrick by Cray.
Yes, and I really enjoyed this book.
Oh, first of all, spoilers?
Warning, spoilers ahead. If you don't want any of the story to be spoiled for you, this is the point where you probably should turn the podcast off, because we're going to be spewing spoilers from here on out.
So I really liked this book a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm partial to things with vampires in it anyway, so, I mean, it kind of got me from the beginning. I like history kind of stuff, and it wasn't like super historical or anything like that, but I like old crap.
Mm-hmm.
So generally setting and stuff, I already was enjoying it, and the beginning to end, I just, well, there was a bit about the end that I wasn't a huge fan of, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I really liked it. You?
I really liked it, and I wanted to ask, did it gave off a love note to Anne Rice?
Oh yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah.
The French vampire. Theo? Sorry, I read it at the beginning of the month, and now it's the end of the month, and there's been time between now and then. But yeah, so Theo, was he not Lestat meets Armand, almost?
That's what it felt like to me. Like, in my notes I put, Theo reminds me of Lestat and Lord Alcaldama mixed together.
Oh my gosh, yes!
And Lord Alcaldama is from Gail Carriger's Parasol Protectorate series. He's a super flamboyant, ridiculous vampire. And that's what Theo reminded me of, because he was very much Lestat in his Frenchness.
In his brattiness.
Yes.
You know, he was definitely a brat for very much sure.
And how he always says shit.
Yes.
Like, that killed me. That killed me. So, yeah, and the fact that his relationship with Merrick was very much an homage to, like, Lestat and Louis.
Yes.
So they very much love each other, and Theo's pushing what he feels is the best thing for him, even though, like, all Merrick wants to do is be left alone.
Yes.
and be like, I want to work on my medicines and leave me alone. I like outdoors and nature, and Theo's like, this is shit.
That might that might be why I loved Merrick, because Louis, you know that Louis is my favorite of Anne Rice's vampires.
Yeah.
Like, I just love him more than a person should, and so I very much loved Merrick.
Yeah.
And because he was very, quiet, not quiet, but reserved,
mm-hmm.
and when he said something, it really, he didn't talk a lot, but when he did talk, it really mattered. And
mm-hmm.
plus, you make a vampire with long black hair, and I'm done. I'm just done. That's
you texted me, and you're like, of course he fucking has long black hair. Of course he does.
So I'm instantly in love. I loved that character. And how awkward and wonderful was it William?
Yeah, William. Holy shit. My favorite quotes were when he saw him with his shirt off for the first time, and he's like, his rippling muscles, why am I thinking this? And then, of course, when he gets drugged, and he's like, I believe I've become an idiot.
Yes.
Ranting about, like, how pretty he is and stuff. Oh my god, I was cracking up. He's so, like you said, he's just so awkward. You can't help but be in love with him. So having Merrick be this old, wise figure who's gorgeous and not fazed by anything, and like, battling his demons, and all this deep, wonderful, angsty, vampire-y things, and then William being like, you're pretty, it just is killing me. So I really liked it. Oh, and I put happy versus melancholy, because Theo's so wee, and then Merrick is not. Oh, and I put the fact that I love that they can fuck.
Yeah, because like, Anne Rice's vampires cannot.
Right.
It depends on your lore. Not all of them can. Some of them can. Some can't. The ones that can are the best.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that, and they didn't really sex. Like, there was a lot of play. So I'm hoping maybe in the next book there's, like, penetration. But it was still good. I mean, I still enjoyed the scenes when they happened. I was like, this is awesome. But I was waiting for the, like, Merrick coming unhinged and just, like, passionate fucking. But it was still good. But yeah, I really liked it. I'm going to pick up William and read it. I don't know why I hadn't. I think I was worried that I was going to accidentally spoil something, because I'd get the books tangled up.
That's exactly why I didn't, because when I read a series all in a row like that, it all becomes one book in my head.
Yeah, and it would be like, blah, 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 and then when William turns into a bird, wasn't that cool? And you're like, what are you talking about? So. Yeah,
so that was actually what, the one thing, like, it's not that I didn't like it, but it made me mad because I wanted the payoff at the end of this book, and I realized I'm not going to get it until the next book.
Yeah.
Was the ending. Like, there's all of this lead up to, will he or won't he turn him? And that didn't get answered.
Yeah.
And it still seems like that's going to be still what the majority of the next book is going to be about.
Mm-hmm.
That made me sad. And it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the book by any means. I mean, the books aren't incredibly long. There is the other one already ready to go. These books were actually published 2 years ago, so they've been out for a while. They're available, but I wanted the whole story because I was really enjoying it. I think that's kind of why I was a little bit bummed out, because I was ready for more story.
Yeah, exactly. Well, luckily there is more story. You just have to go snag it. But yeah, I wanted it when it was the end and he's like, because he ends up biting his neck, right? Or like feeding on him essentially?
Yes.
Okay. So I was like, is this end? Like, no, you cock tease. I guess we'll have to read it and be happy because they've gotten great reviews, so I'm hoping that in the next book he turns into a vampire and they live happily ever after and adopt a bunch of vampire children, and I don't know.
I would love to see her do an offshoot story for Theo.
Yeah, we should look into that, see if she has, because I haven't super researched it. So she may have something on our website or something, so we'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really enjoyable, perfect for Halloween, because it was such a good, I don't want to say love letter, because everybody always used that, but that's the only term I could think of. It's a good love letter to Anne Rice, but really making it her own world.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it was very well done. Big fan. So highly recommend. 5 stars.
Nice. Yeah, me too. That was actually what I rated it.
Oh, good. Yeah, me too.
So that's going to wrap us up for this month. That was our bottom pick, Merrick by Cray. We'll have links to that if you haven't read it. You can also find more of her work through Goodreads and on Amazon and Nook and all of that good stuff.
So next week, we're excited to announce that we're going to have Gail Carriger on the show talking about her new book that's coming out, Romancing the Werewolf, and chatting about fun romance things. We're also going to be talking about our book of the month that we're picking and cool industry news, so definitely join us then.
Yep.
Until then.
Bye.